Alright guys, welcome back to this channel, and in this video we are going to be proving the squeezed theorem, and we are going to be using the epsilon-Delta definition to prove it, right? So now let's even know what epsilon-Delta definition is. We want to know that for all epsilon greater than 0, there is delta greater than 0, right? Such that the absolute value of x minus c, and c is our limit point anyways, is less than delta, right? We want to get a delta that is in the neighborhood of x, that is c plus delta comma c minus delta, and this would imply that the absolute value of the f of x is less than L, right? And this is less than epsilon. So now we want to prove that if f of x basically can be less than g of x, and g of x is actually less than or equals to h of x, and peradventure we now look for the limit of f of x, and it's now equal to the limit of h of x equals to L, then we can say that g of x, the limit of g of x will also be that L being in the middle of h of x and f of x. So that's exactly what we want to do. So to define the limit of, since the limit of f of x, we know that it is L, so we can define it as, for all epsilon greater than 0, there is delta greater than 0. Let me call this one delta 1 because of I have f of x and h of x. So let me call it delta 1, such that x is minus c less than delta 1, implies that f of x, right, minus L is less than e epsilon, right? And let me define for g of h of x. So for all epsilon greater than 0, there is delta 2, right, greater than 0, such that the absolute value of x minus c less than delta 2 is implies h of x is still, the limit is still L, we're told in the question, right? So now to make this balance, we will now pick each of them one after the other. So let's pick for f of x. So the absolute value of f of x minus L, okay, let me rub this off and write it clearly. So the absolute value of f of x minus L is less than epsilon, right? Which means that I can write this as minus epsilon less than f of x minus L less than epsilon. Do you agree? And this means that minus epsilon plus L is less than f of x is less than epsilon plus L. Do you agree? Okay. So if that is the case, similarly, that will be the same thing for, let me say, similarly, that will be exactly the same thing for h. So that will be minus epsilon plus L will be less than h of x, and this will be less than epsilon plus L, right, for h. So now let's take the minimum of data so we can conclude for g of x, right? Let's take minimum of data. So taking minimum of data, let me just ignore that part. Okay, so now take data to be equal to the minimum of data 1, because I have two stuff there, so data 1 and data 2. So now if I want to, now we know, right, that f of x is less than g of x and is less than h of x, right? So how do I compare these guys? If it's less, instead of writing this expression, look at this expression here. Let's quickly rub off this side first. uh, I can choose any of the two basically to work with, but let me work with the first one. So I know that my uh, minus epsilon plus L is less than this. So if something is less than f of x, and f of x is less than g of x, and f of x is also less than e plus epsilon, so why can't I say that minus epsilon plus L is actually less than f of x? which is actually less than g of x, right? And g of x is definitely from the definition less than h of x. And h of x from here is less than epsilon plus L, right? Good. So I can now bring out what I need. That's it. I'm done. So look at it. It's not that all. Look at it. So I can now bring out this part less than and this part transitively with this guy. So what does that mean? It means that minus epsilon plus L is less than g of x and is less than epsilon plus what? Plus L. If I should bring it together, that would be that minus epsilon is less than g of x minus L less than epsilon. And what does this mean? In an absolute value form, it means that the absolute value of g of x, you see, very interesting, is less than epsilon. And what does this mean? It takes us back to the definition, the epsilon delta definition. I am done, which means that the limit of g of x is also equals to L. And that's what squeeze theorem is talking about, right? That's interesting. So, guys, if you have not subscribed to this channel, that's very wrong. Oh. Click on the subscription button so you can see more interesting videos of this nature. So, don't forget to like, share once again, and subscribe. So, until then, make sure you keep analyzing mathematics, keep solving, and I'll see you in the next video.